from New York City, America's accountant Dan Geltrude. Dan, it's great to see you. So Dan, this battle is quite fascinating, and I am enjoying watching it. I thought they loved unions, but apparently they don't.
Well, here's what's going to be interesting in all this, Stephanie. So you talk about workers' rights, and certainly workers should have the right to be treated fairly, and we have labor laws to ensure that. So now when you start talking about unionization, that to me starts to go for everything's going to get more expensive. So when you talk about people are going to be earning more, when we saw AOC talking about that workers need these things, okay, fine. Just remember, we are all going to pay for that because Amazon is not going to have a situation where labor costs are going to become significantly increased, and that's not going to get passed on ultimately to the end user of those products. So workers may make more in a unionized situation, and it also means that products become a lot more expensive. And that's why we see so much work going overseas, because labor in the United States is simply too expensive.
Yeah, and just to be clear and consistent here, I've never been a huge fan of the idea of labor unions. With that being said, I do take issue with the fact that these companies, corporations like Apple and Starbucks and Amazon, they're very woke, if you will, and most of their money and donations go to the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party supports labor unions, yet they feel like they don't need to be part of that. And then part of Amazon's reasons for not wanting to be part of a union here is they're saying that their company already offers much of what unions would demand, but obviously not, because there's a protest there.
Well, you reap what you sow. So when you have these corporations that are going to go to the left, then this is the cause and effect. This is the result of what you get. It's the same as there's many wealthy Americans out there that are saying, you know, we should really pay a lot more taxes, and they say these things. And then when you have people like Senator Elizabeth Warren start talking about a wealth tax, then you start to say, well, that tax is really not going to work. So the hypocrisy that we see here from the left is really astounding, but you reap what you sow, and that's what's happening.
And then specifically when it comes to Amazon, I've heard mixed reviews. Some people say it's a great company to work for and that they pay really well. Then you hear the other horror stories of people saying that they're not given enough time to use the restroom during their work shift, and that they're just overworked and underpaid. So employees obviously are going to complain, and it's a free country. They don't have to work there. I get that. But if these stories are true, that the employees don't have time to take a break and catch a breath and use the restroom, that's a problem.
It certainly is, and that's why we go back to, look, workers need to have rights. There's no question about that. But, the situation right now as to why these unions seem to be gaining traction in these companies is because they can take the chance of trying to unionize, because if there are repercussions, meaning that the companies kind of label certain people as troublemakers and get them out, those people are able to get other jobs, because the labor market is really strong right now for the workers. They can find other places to work. So I think that's emboldened this movement. And the other thing to keep in mind, what will happen in November if the Republicans gain control of at least one of the houses in Congress, which seems likely? You're probably not going to have as friendly of a federal government towards organized labor. So I think they're in a race to try to get things done before that.
Yeah, and now that Congresswoman AOC and Bernie Sanders are on this, they are very outspoken. They have a huge following, and they'll certainly have a big impact. So we'll keep an eye on what happens with that. Now, the effort to erase student loans continues, and we heard from Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's again urging the Biden White House to cancel student loan debt before the midterms. Clearly, she's looking for something for the Democrats to campaign on, because they don't really have that much right now. But also, too, I don't know how helpful that's going to be, because think of all of the rest of us who paid for our own student loan debt. It seems very unfair that they're going to wipe it for everyone else.
Right. So right now in the United States, you have $1.7 trillion of student debt. That's an enormous amount of money. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. One thing I will say is this. right off the bat, Democrats trying to buy votes. Let's put that aside and really talk about the substance of the issue. If they want to solve this problem, then they should actually be making it a requirement that there is a certain level of education a high school student has to take or receive related to their finances. What happens here is that all this money and loans gets thrown at these kids, and you know what? They take it for college and not think about, well, wait a minute, I'm going to have to start paying this back in 4 or 5 years. So they end up putting themselves deep in a financial hole. Well, whose fault is that? They took on the debt. They have to be responsible to pay it back. They need to look at, how can I best put together my education the most financially effective way? Teach them how to do that. Go to community college. Go to state universities. Don't go to a private university for 4 or 5 years and build up this tremendous debt for which you can never get out of.
So well said. And then think of those who, as you pointed out, went to community college, stayed in their state, or went to trade school, and then they're finding out that now, like, their taxpayer dollars technically are going to go erase the student loans of other people who made bad decisions. So it's just totally insane. But I know that it's a big talking point for the Democrats, and I know that they desperately want to get that push before the midterm. So again, we'll see what happens with that as well. Well, Dan, we got to leave it here. We appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks a lot. Coming up next, the